All right, for our first topic, we are talking about ethics, values, and morals. And so these are terms that are going to pop up a lot, probably in our discussions, and they're often used interchangeably because they're all very similar in their essence. But, excuse me, as you see as we break it down, there are three distinct different terms, and they influence how we act slightly different, how we organize society. So the purpose of this lecture is to kind of break down the three, explain how they each function and also how they interact with each other. So our first concept is, before I do the concepts, I had thrown this quote up on the Sakai page as something for you to think about. And I really like this quote. It says, every aspect of practice, every decision, every assessment, every intervention, and virtually every action you undertake as a social worker must be considered from the perspective of your professional ethics and obligations. And so I had you guys kind of, in your own words, talk about what this looks like within your social work practice and why it's important. And for me, if I'm doing some personal self-reflection, thinking about when I was doing clinical social work, I was being entrusted to deal with individuals. And so these are humans. These are people who are made in the image of God, are precious creatures. I don't like that word, but they're human. They're not just a piece of paper or an inanimate object. It's someone who lives and breathes and has feelings. And we as social workers have this very high privilege of caring for individuals who are often in a vulnerable position. And so we have potential to do a lot of good, but we also have potential to do a lot of harm. And so I had to think about everything through the lens of my professional ethics and obligations. And so was doing a certain assessment going to cause them more distress or harm? Did they have a trauma background that if I assigned them to a male case manager that would trigger their trauma in an unhealthy way? Would me canceling an appointment or rescheduling somehow harm them? And so you're really looking at how your own personal behaviors, whether intentional or unintentional, might cause harm or distress to a client and somehow violate the ethics in the code of ethics. That's really the social work Bible. And so you're really always, you can't, every action has an outcome, both good and bad. And so this course is really designed to help you think about all the different actions you might take and how they might either help or harm a client. So that's kind of my reflection on the quote. All right, so values versus ethics. Like I mentioned before, these terms are often used interchangeably, but they are not identical. They are two different words and two different concepts. And so if you were in class right now, I would ask you like what your opinion might be the difference between the two. Well, I am going to answer that for you because I'm going to flesh this out in the next few slides. All right, so we're going to start with values because the values, I think, to me are more like if you're thinking of like an umbrella going from the most small and specific to the more broad, values are kind of the more smaller specific things that start with. So values are the principles and ideas that assist in making judgments on what is important. So values differ from person to person. I have different values from you. You have different values from your parents. You have different values from a significant other, from friends, from other social workers in the profession. And so that itself isn't inherently wrong. Values can be developed from how we've grown up, our personal experiences, how we see the world. And they are very individualized to the person. And so these values are what's considered our motivators, and it forms a foundation for our behavior. So we often act out of what we value, and the next slide will kind of help explain that. Values ultimately, the end goal is trying to achieve what is good and desirable. Again, this is individualized, so it's good and what's good and desirable for the person. And it often focuses on ideas we hope to achieve. And so often you see a value of social workers as you're looking for equality or social justice or safety, dignity for all. Those are often our values that drive our behavior. And so I would assume that a lot of us in this room have similar values because we're all going into the same profession that has a very specific focus. So values break down. So this would be an example of how personal values drive behavior. So here's a situation. So you have a major test coming up, and if this test will determine if you pass your class or not. And so you're super busy, you're struggling to find time to study, and you happen to have access on accident to the answers of the test. So whether, let's say, like a student from a previous class happened to still have them, or the teacher accidentally shared the Google Doc with the answers instead of having a blank study guide, something like that. You now have access to the answers, and using them would allow you to not have to study, and you will pass the class. So if your value system is founded upon honesty, how might you behave in this situation? More than likely, you would not utilize the answer guide. You would let the professor know, and you would take it upon yourself the responsibility to find time to study. And if you can't, you will accept the consequence, because you value honesty, and going against that by cheating would go against your value system. Now, if you, one of your higher values, you might still value honesty, but one of your stronger and higher values was achievement and success, how might you act differently? Well, you might utilize those test scores, because it's not your fault that the professor accidentally shared them. It's not your fault that the professor doesn't change the structure of the test every year, and so students have answers from previous years. You're not concerned about that. You're concerned about passing the class and getting to your end goal that will ultimately bring you happiness, and you have now found a tool that will assist you in achieving that goal. And so in this, we're not weighing if something is right or wrong. We're just looking at what is your value and how does that dictate your behavior. And so you could think about this like in the social work context of if one of your values is self-determination and allowing, believing that all individuals have the right to decide their choices. You might be working with a client who is very vocal about substance use. And so one of your values might also be a healthy lifestyle, and you don't believe in the use of, let's say, heroin. But you believe one of your stronger values is self-determination. Working with a client, you might focus on that and helping them figure out, okay, what's the pros and cons of using? Is this the best choice for you, versus telling them that they need to stop because they're not living a healthy lifestyle and they might potentially die. And so that's kind of how values dictate possibly how we interact in the social work profession. But the example of the test kind of relates back to like personal values and personal life. So here's some more examples of how values kind of motivate and drive behavior. So if we're looking at, we'll start clockwise, someone who values success might work late nights to achieve a promotion. On the flip side, if someone has a value of family relations, they might bypass the promotion because they don't want to sacrifice family time at night. Someone who values friendship might drop everything to help a friend. Someone who values boundaries and maybe self-care would say, no, I can't help you because I have my regularly scheduled manicure. People who live a healthy lifestyle make sure they have time to work out in the morning. Someone who might value sleep will maybe not work out in the morning. Person who values integrity admits they stole a piece of candy. Someone who values commitment might be more willing to go to marriage counseling than to file for divorce. So that's kind of just some breaking down. Again, this is not to say that someone's values are right or wrong. It's just showing that everybody's values are different and are going to drive their behavior in certain ways. So it's really helpful for us to understand our core values because it helps us become more self-aware of why we do what we do. So self-awareness helps us understand how people perceive us. So there might be judgments of why we do what we do. It can maybe, for example, like I'm a working mother, and so that happens to be a value where I am very filled by working, but it also can cause me a lot of stress balancing work-life balance. And so someone from the outside might see and make some judgments of like, well, if you didn't work, you wouldn't be so stressed. But I also might be stressed because I don't always enjoy being home 24/7 with my children. Like working brings me fulfillment. And so it can help us maybe sometimes understand why people say the things they do to us or why we do what we do. And it helps enable us to identify the personal qualities that we would like to change. All right, that is values. So tying that in now to morals. Morals refer to an individual system of beliefs regarding what is right and wrong. So now we're kind of going into that like right and wrong, good or bad. So once again, morals come from the individual. They're very internal. They're driven by the difference between good and bad. So it's driving us to always to achieve from, we ultimately want to achieve what is good. But it does come from the individual's definition of what is good. Having this sense of morality is what separates humans from animals and drives that like good or bad decision making. It's not necessarily just survival. It's bringing in the concept of something is good and something is bad. And this really defines how things should work according to one's values. Should is very subjective because we live in a world where everybody is bringing their values and morals. And so sometimes things conflict with each other. So breaking it down a little bit more, this is how morals drive behavior. So this is going back to the same example of having a major test coming up that will determine if you pass the class or not. You're so busy and struggling to time to study, you get access to the answers. Is it right or wrong to cheat? So this is now going back from what's driving us to make the decision. It's looking at, do we believe it's right or wrong? So if we go back to the value of honesty, would it be good or moral to cheat? The answer would probably be no, it is not, because it goes against our value, and so that makes it bad. But if you value success over honesty, would it be good or moral to cheat? Well, it might be good because it's helping you achieve your end goal of success and fulfilling that value. So that would justify it and make it good. So this is kind of like values are here and they're kind of driving what we believe is good or bad. So here's some more examples. It is bad to steal candy. Helping a friend is a good thing to do. It is bad to skip a workout. So going back to like, if you have a healthy lifestyle is what in your values, it would be bad to skip a workout. Working late at night is a good thing if you value success and achievement. Saving your marriage is a good way to move forward if you value commitment. And so that kind of, I hope that helps kind of make those connections between values and morals. So why do moral dilemmas occur? They occur when two different morals conflict with each other. So here's a good one. If a daughter couldn't afford life-saving medication for her dying mother, but she had access to the medication storeroom at work that she could steal the medication, her core values might tell her that stealing is wrong. However, her morality would tell her she needs to protect her mother and help her mother survive. So her daughter might end up doing the wrong thing, which is stealing as judged by her values, for the right reasons, which is saving her mother, as judged by her morals. So that's where kind of we start to experience these dilemmas, and we're going to kind of keep fleshing this out in the next couple classes. And so this is just an introduction. You don't have to master this concept right away. But these are, again, I think a couple slides back we said our morals should dictate what is right or wrong. But sometimes we have these values and morals conflicting with each other, that if we do one thing, it might violate one, but help the other, and vice versa. So one more quick concept before this lecture is done. We're going to throw ethics in here, which is like probably a nice cousin to morals. It's closer to morals than it is to values. Because ethics, what makes it different than morals, it's more of a universal concept versus an individual. So it refers to the guidelines of conduct that address the questions about morality. So it's usually considered more universal. So like you think about the NSAW Code of Ethics, all social workers have to abide by it regardless of their values or personal morals. Sometimes they're considered to be constraining because they're preventing things from happening. It asks what the correct or right or wrong action is, and relies more on logic and rationale or rational criteria to reach a decision besides personal emotions. And so I am going to actually put these out on Sakai because I'm not going to be able to like really flesh them out in the video, but these are some examples of ethics, especially in the professional sphere. Ethics matter because they define who we are as a society, create norms of behavior, and society would fall in decay